What did you do?
The entire cafeteria froze the moment the tray hit the floor. Metal against tile, that sharp. Echoing clang like the start of a fight nobody wanted to see, but couldn't look away from. He stood over her, eyes blazing with that same cocky smirk he wore every day. The bully, Marcus Reed, varsity jacket, loud voice, fake confidence that fed on fear. And in front of him, the new girl, Ava Monroe. Small, quiet, the kind of girl who didn't talk much. She had only been here 2 weeks. 2 weeks of whispers, stares, and laughter that followed her down the hall. But today, he'd gone too far. "Pick it up," he sneered, pointing to the spilled food on the floor. Ava just looked at him steady, calm, no flinch, no fear. The cafeteria went silent. Even the vending machine stopped humming. Then Marcus grabbed her arm. Hard. You could hear the breath leave the room. A teacher yelled from across the tables, but it was too late. His hand twisted her wrist, pushing, testing her. For a moment, it looked like she'd break, but she didn't. Ava's eyes lifted. Something in her face changed, like a switch flipped. No tears, no trembling. Just that quiet fire, the kind that made him step back before he even realized why. And then it happened. One move, 1 second. Marcus Reed, the biggest bully in school, was on the floor, crying. That's when everyone realized. She wasn't the one who needed saving, 2 weeks before that cafeteria moment. Ava Monroe stepped off a city bus, with one duffel bag and a half-broken phone. The wind in Eastbridge, Virginia, carried the smell of rain and fried food from the corner diner. Nothing like home. Back in Atlanta, things were louder, warmer. But her mother said they needed a fresh start, and Ava didn't argue. She never did. Eastbridge High was bigger than any school she'd ever seen. Polished floors, glowing trophy cases, and faces that stared a little too long when she walked by. It wasn't that the students were cruel, not all of them anyway, but the way they looked at her, it was like she didn't belong. Like she was some new chapter in a book they never wanted to read. Ava was used to that. Her mom worked nights, her dad wasn't around, and she'd learned early how to disappear in plain sight. Quiet, careful, always calculating how much space she was allowed to take up. But behind the silence was a girl who noticed everything, who watched how people moved, who listened when they thought no one was listening. She had that kind of stillness that made people underestimate her. The first few days, the whispers started. Where's she from? She doesn't talk much. Must think she's better than us. She heard it all. She didn't react. Just smiled sometimes, soft and polite, and kept walking. Then there was Marcus. Every school had one, the self-declared king. He had friends who laughed too loud at his jokes, and teachers who gave him too many passes. His dad was a cop, his mom ran the PTA, and Marcus moved through the hallways like he owned them. He noticed Ava by the end of her first week. Noticed her quiet. Noticed how people turned to look when she passed, not because she tried to stand out, but because something about her presence demanded attention. He didn't like that. The first time he said something, it was just a comment. "Hey, new girl, you lost?" She looked up, gave him a small, polite smile. "No, just getting where I'm going." That smile, that calm, it made him feel small. And Marcus Reed hated feeling small. By the second week, his teasing turned sharper. He'd knock her books off her desk, whisper things when teachers weren't looking. The other students laughed not because they found it funny, but because it was easier to laugh than to be the next target. Ava didn't report him, didn't cry. Instead, every night she'd go home, help her mom with dinner, and then retreat to her room, to a space filled with old trophies and a single photograph of her and her father. In that picture, she was 8 years old, standing in a white karate gi, holding her first gold medal. Her dad had taught her everything about balance, discipline, and restraint. Never start a fight, but never let one break you. When he passed away, she promised herself she'd never forget those lessons. She trained less after he was gone, but the mindset, the strength never left her. That morning, before the cafeteria incident, she'd woken up early, packed her lunch, and told herself, just get through the day. She didn't know Marcus had been waiting for her. Didn't know his friends had planned to mess with her, Little didn't know the tray she was holding would end up on the floor, or that the quiet girl everyone ignored was about to show them all what real power looked like, but she had no idea. That day would change how everyone saw her. By her second Monday at Eastbridge High, Ava had already memorized the rhythm of the hallways when the crowd thickened between classes, which lockers creaked the loudest, where she could walk without bumping shoulders. She kept her earbuds in most of the time, not to listen, but to avoid listening. People were crueler when they thought you couldn't hear them, but Marcus Reed made sure his words always reached her. "Hey, Monroe, you gonna eat that mystery meat today? Or you on some vegan yoga spiritual diet?" He'd say it loud enough for everyone to hear, grinning as his friends snickered behind him. Ava didn't look up. She'd just sip her bag, slide past, and keep walking. That only made him louder. At first, it was small things. A shoulder bump that almost knocked her into a locker. A note on her desk that said, "Go back to where you came from." A fake apology in front of the class, "Didn't see you there. My bad." Most teachers brushed it off. Marcus had that kind of charm that worked on adults. His grades were good, his smile was bright, and he played basketball for the school team. To them, he was just a kid with energy. But to Ava, he was the shadow that followed her down every hallway. One afternoon, while she sat alone in the library, a voice broke the silence. "Don't let him get to you." It was Kayla, a junior with box braids and a denim jacket full of patches. She slid into the seat across from Ava, chewing gum like she didn't have a care in the world. "I've seen the way he acts." "Marcus is all bark, no bite," Kayla said, lowering her voice. "But he loves attention. You keep ignoring him, he'll get bored." Ava smiled faintly. "That's the plan." Kayla raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, you got patience. I'd have broken his nose by now." They both laughed softly, the first time Ava had really laughed since moving here. For a brief moment, she felt lighter, like she'd finally found an ally. But Marcus wasn't getting bored. He was getting desperate. A few days later, he cornered her by the lockers with his phone out. "Yo, say hi to TikTok." He grinned, flipping on the camera. His friends gathered behind him, recording. Ava froze. He started mocking her accent, twisting her words, mimicking how she pronounced Atlanta. The group laughed like it was a comedy show. She didn't react. She didn't even blink. Just gathered her books and walked off. The video hit social media that night. By morning, everyone had seen it. The comments were worse than the laughter. "She's weird. She didn't even stand up for herself. She thinks she's too good to talk." Even Kayla looked uncomfortable when Ava walked in that day. "You okay?" she asked quietly. Ava nodded. "Yeah, I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. Every word, every stare, it built inside her like pressure under glass. That Friday, Ava skipped lunch and hid in the art room. The smell of paint and clay helped her breathe again. She sat by the window, sketching in silence. It was the only place Marcus never bothered to go. She drew people faces she'd seen, emotions she couldn't say out loud. Her hands moved quickly, almost urgently. When she finished, the page showed a girl with fire in her eyes and a hand raised in defense. She looked powerful, untouchable, everything Ava wanted to be. "Hey, that's dope," said a voice from behind. She jumped. It was Mr. Carter, the art teacher. He was in his early 30s, always wearing messy paint-splattered shirts and a tired smile. "You've got real talent," he said. "You should think about joining the art show next month." Ava shook her head. "I don't really do crowds." "That's okay. Just don't let people like Marcus stop you from showing the world what you've got." She froze. "You know about him?" He sighed. "Everybody does. But bullies thrive when we stay silent." "You're stronger than you think, Ava." It stuck with her. That night, she stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The bruises on her wrist from where Marcus had shoved her last week had faded, but she could still feel them. Her dad's voice echoed in her head. "You don't fight to hurt. You fight to protect what's worth keeping: your peace, your dignity." She whispered to herself, "I'm done running." The next Monday, the cafeteria was packed. Ava sat alone again, eating quietly, pretending not to notice Marcus walking in. His laughter cut through the air like static. He spotted her instantly. "Oh, look, she's back from hiding," he said. His friends followed him, phones already out. Kayla, sitting 2 tables away, whispered, "Don't do it, Marcus." But he didn't hear. He walked right up to Ava's table, smirking. "You think you're better than me?" She didn't look up. "I think you should leave me alone." Her voice was calm, almost too calm. That only made him angrier. He slammed his palm on the table, making her tray shake. "Say that again?" Ava's eyes slowly lifted to meet his. There was no fear there, just quiet strength. And for a split second, a tiny second, Marcus hesitated. But his pride was louder than his conscience. He reached out and grabbed her arm. That single move, that one decision, would end up changing everything. The cafeteria gasped. The teachers turned. And Ava Monroe, the quiet girl from Atlanta, finally decided she wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. Marcus's fingers closed around Ava's wrist like a vice. The cafeteria went from noise to silence in a heartbeat. Even the hum of the air vents seemed to fade. Every eye turned toward them, frozen mid-chew, mid-sentence, mid-scroll. "Let go," Ava said quietly. He didn't. His grip tightened. "What? You gonna cry again?" He mocked, loud enough for everyone to hear. Thought the new girl could take a joke? She stared at him, eyes steady, the same way her father used to look at opponents in the dojo before a sparring match. Except this wasn't a sparring mat. This was a cafeteria full of cameras. A tray clattered somewhere behind her. Kayla's voice cut through the tension. "Marcus, stop! You're doing too much." But he didn't stop. He pushed harder, trying to make her flinch. The crowd started whispering small ripples of sound that made the moment feel even bigger. Someone muttered, "He's really gonna hit her?" Someone else whispered, "Record it." Ava's heart thudded in her chest, slow and heavy. She could feel the heat of humiliation rising in her neck. But behind it was something deeper, something sharper. She wasn't back in Atlanta. But in her mind, she was standing again on the cracked wooden floor of her father's gym. She could hear him. "When someone grabs you, you don't fight their strength. You use it. You breathe. You decide who you are before you move." One deep inhale. One calm exhaled. Her voice came out low, but steady. "You need to let go. Now." Marcus laughed, but there was a nervous edge to it. "Or what? You gonna call your mommy?" He didn't see her shift her weight, barely an inch of motion, just enough to center her balance. The crowd didn't notice either, but Kayla did. She saw the change in Ava's stance, the straightening of her shoulders, the stillness before a storm. Then it happened all at once. Ava twisted her wrist slightly, stepping sideways and down. The movement was smooth, almost gentle. Marcus's grip broke instantly. Before he understood what was happening, his own momentum carried him forward. Ava pivoted, guiding his arm with hers, and he stumbled hard right onto the tile floor. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, phones raised higher. Marcus landed with a heavy thud, his elbows scraping the tile. His phone skidded across the floor, spinning to a stop near a table leg. For a second, he just sat there, eyes wide, trying to understand how he ended up below the girl he'd been trying to humiliate. Ava didn't move toward him. She didn't gloat. She simply stood there, breathing evenly. Watching him the way a storm watches the sea, Mr. Carter, the art teacher, was the first adult to reach them. "Enough. Everyone back to your tables." He shouted, but no one listened. The entire cafeteria was buzzing, half disbelief, half awe. Marcus scrambled to his feet, face red. "You tripped me." He barked, but even he didn't sound convinced. His friends backed away. None of them wanted to stand next to him now. Ava didn't answer. She just looked at him, eyes calm, voice level. "You grabbed me. I asked you to stop." It wasn't loud, but it cut through the chaos like a blade. Mr. Carter stepped between them. "Marcus, office. Now." Marcus hesitated, still glaring at her, but the room had turned. The energy that used to fuel him, the laughter, the approval, was gone. Nobody was laughing anymore. Some were filming, yes, but their faces showed something closer to respect than entertainment. Kayla moved to Ava's side. You good? Ava nodded slowly, the adrenaline still shaking in her hands. Yeah, I'm okay. But deep inside, something was shifting. Not just relief, something stronger. It was the feeling of taking back power she hadn't even realized she'd given away. Mr. Carter guided Ava toward the hallway. As they walked, whispers followed her. Did you see that? She didn't even hit him. She just flipped him. In the main office, Principal Daniels listened as both students explained their sides. Marcus tried to twist the story, claimed she attacked him, but the security footage told the truth. It showed him grabbing first, pushing first, taunting first. Ava's reaction was defensive, controlled. When the video replayed, even Marcus looked smaller. Principal Daniels sighed. Marcus, this is unacceptable behavior. You'll be suspended for 5 days. We'll be calling your parents. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, but stopped when he saw the footage. Looping again on the monitor the moment he hit the floor, the look of surprise on his face, the sound of the crowd's gasp. He shut his mouth. Ava waited quietly until the meeting ended. When it was over, the principal turned to her. You handled yourself calmly, Ava. That's commendable. You didn't retaliate with violence. You showed restraint. Ava nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you, ma'am. She walked back down the hallway. Kayla was waiting for her near the lockers. The moment their eyes met, Kayla broke into a grin. Girl, that was legendary. You didn't even break a sweat. Ava smiled for real this time. I didn't want to hurt him. Kayla tilted her head. You didn't have to. You just showed him what respect looks like when it stands up straight. For the rest of the day, people looked at Ava differently. Not everyone said something, but they didn't look through her anymore. The quiet girl had become something else entirely, a reminder that silence doesn't mean weakness. That night, she and her mom sat at the small kitchen table, plates of spaghetti between them. Her mother noticed the bruise on Ava's wrist. What happened? She asked softly. Ava hesitated. Someone tried to push me around today. Her mom's jaw tightened. Did you tell a teacher? Ava smiled faintly. Didn't need to. Her mother studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You've got your father's calm, she said. And his strength? He'd be proud. Ava swallowed the lump in her throat. I miss him. I know, baby, her mother said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. But he's still teaching you. You remembered what he taught, didn't you? Ava nodded. Yeah. Breathe. Decide who you are before you move. Her mother smiled. Exactly. Outside, the rain started to fall, tapping softly against the window. For the first time since they'd moved, Ava felt like she could breathe again. The next morning, she walked into school with her head high. Some people smiled, others whispered, but none dared to mock her. Marcus wasn't there, suspended. His legend of intimidation cracked wide open. As she passed the cafeteria, she paused by the doorway. The same room where she'd been humiliated now looked ordinary against tables. Trays, sunlight spilling across the floor, but to her it was sacred ground. The place where she stopped being invisible. She walked in, sat at her usual table, and opened her lunch. Within minutes, Kayla joined her, followed by 2 other students she barely knew. They didn't say much at first, just sat sharing space. It was quiet, but it was comfortable. Ava looked around, realizing something subtle had changed. The power dynamic. The way people treated silence. The way fear shifted when one person stood up not with fists, but with dignity. And though she didn't seek attention, she knew this. The story of what happened yesterday would travel farther than any video Marcus had ever posted by the end of the week. Someone had drawn a small mural in the art hallway, a silhouette of a girl standing tall. Sunlight behind her, one hand raised as if deflecting a storm. Beneath it, painted in bold letters, were 4 words: power, balance, grace, courage. Ava never admitted it, but she knew exactly who had painted it, and she also knew that from that day forward, whenever someone tried to break her, they'd remember what happened in the cafeteria, how one quiet girl taught the loudest boy in school what real strength looked like. The next few days at Eastbridge High felt different, like the air itself had shifted. The tension that used to follow Ava like a shadow had lifted, placed by something quieter but heavier. Two students didn't whisper when she passed anymore. They didn't laugh. Some smiled, others avoided her eyes. Unsure how to act around the girl who'd stood up to Marcus's read. The cafeteria, the same place that once made her skin. Crawl now carried an unspoken respect. When she walked through those doors, conversations softened. People moved aside without even realizing it. She didn't want the attention, but she couldn't ignore the change. Kayla sat beside her one afternoon, unpacking her lunch with her usual grin. "You know you broke the internet, right?" Ava looked up. "What?" Kayla laughed. "Somebody posted the video from a different angle, the one where he grabbed you first. It's everywhere. People are calling you the calm storm girl." Ava's eyes widened. "You're serious?" Kayla nodded. "Serious enough that people from other schools are talking about it. You've got comments like, 'That's how you handle a bully with grace?'" And she didn't even raise her voice. Ava shook her head. "That's not what I wanted." "I know," Kayla said, her smile fading. "But you didn't ask for fame. You just showed people something real. That's rare." Still, Ava felt uneasy. She hadn't meant to humiliate Marcus only to protect herself, but seeing his red face, hearing the laughter as he fell, that image replayed in her head like a loop she couldn't shut off. That night she dreamed of her father again. They were back in the old gym. He was standing barefoot on the mat, hands behind his back. The afternoon sun cutting through dusty windows. "Remember," he said softly, "strength without compassion is just another kind of weakness." She woke up before dawn, his words echoing in her head. The next day, Mr. Carter stopped her in the hallway. "Ava," he said, "do you have a moment?" She nodded. He smiled gently. "I just wanted to tell you that what you did, that composure, that control, it was remarkable. Most adults can't even manage that." "Thank you," she said, lowering her eyes. He hesitated. "I also wanted to tell you something about Marcus. Not to excuse him, but to help you understand." Ava frowned. "His father's been sick," Mr. Carter said quietly. "Real sick. Marcus has been carrying a lot of anger. He doesn't know where to put. Doesn't make what he did okay, but sometimes people lash out when they don't know how to ask for help." Ava felt something shift in her chest. Pity, no empathy, maybe? She remembered the way Marcus's eyes looked when he hit the floor, not just shocked, but lost. Later that afternoon, while she was leaving art class, she saw him. Marcus walking slowly down the hallway with his backpack slung over one shoulder. His swagger was gone. His eyes stayed low, his usual entourage nowhere in sight. When he noticed her, he stopped. For a moment, it looked like he might turn around. Then, to her surprise, he walked toward her. Ava tensed, but didn't move. He stopped a few feet away, cleared his throat. "Hey." His voice was low, not the booming tone that used to fill the halls. "Hey," she said back, careful but calm. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I didn't mean for things to go that far. I was just—" He paused, struggling for words. "I've been messed up lately. My dad's been in and out of the hospital, and I guess I was just taking stuff out on people." "You didn't deserve that." Ava studied him for a moment. "You hurt me," she said softly. "Not just that day. Every day before it." He nodded slowly. "I know, and I'm sorry. I really am." For a long time she didn't answer. She could have said a dozen things, cutting, cold, victorious. But instead, she took a slow breath and said, "I forgive you." Marcus blinked, like he didn't know what to do with that. "I don't want to be your enemy," Ava continued. "I just want to be left in peace." He nodded again, his voice breaking a little. "Yeah, you got it." And then he walked away. No swagger, no phone, no friends. Just a boy carrying the weight of his own choices. Ava stood there for a moment, watching him go. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt lighter. That evening, while she was sketching in her notebook, Kayla texted her a picture. It was of Marcus, sitting alone in the gym bleachers after basketball practice. The caption read, "He's been quiet lately. Maybe he's changing." Ava looked at the photo for a long time, then closed her sketchbook. The next week, Principal Daniels announced a new initiative during Assembly Respect Week, focused on kindness, conflict resolution, and empathy. Ava almost laughed at the irony. But when Mr. Carter asked her to design the poster for it, she said yes. The final poster hung in the school entrance by Monday morning. Simple black and white drawing of two hands, one open, one reaching. Underneath the words, "Strength isn't about who you can break. It's about what you can lift." Students stopped to look at it on their way to class. Some smiled. Some just stared. But everyone read it. One afternoon, as Ava was packing up her art supplies, Marcus walked past the poster. He stopped, looked at it for a long time, then turned to her. "You drew that?" "Yeah." He nodded. "It's good." Then, after a pause, "Thanks for not making me the villain forever." She looked at him, seeing something different now. Not the bully from the cafeteria, not a boy learning how to rebuild himself. When she got home that evening, her mom was in the kitchen, humming to a gospel song on the radio. Ava sat down at the table, the smell of cornbread filling the air. "How was school?" her mother asked. Ava smiled. "Better." Her mom looked at her, eyes soft. "You seem lighter?" Ava nodded. "I think I finally understand what Dad meant. Being strong isn't about fighting back. It's about choosing peace when you could do damage." Her mother smiled knowingly. "That's my girl." The following Friday, Ava and Kayla walked out of school together. The air was warm, the sky painted with streaks of orange and pink. Kids were laughing, music played from a car in the parking lot, and for the first time since moving to Eastbridge, Ava felt like she belonged. "Hey," Kayla said, nudging her. "You realize you kind of changed this school, right?" Ava laughed. "I didn't change anything," Kayla smirked. "You sure? Because before you showed up, people like Marcus ruled the halls. Now he opens doors for freshmen." They both laughed, the sound light and free, as they reached the gate. Ava looked back at the building, the windows glowing in the setting sun. For a moment, she could almost see her father standing there. Arms crossed, nodding in quiet approval, she whispered, "Thanks, Dad." And then she turned, stepping forward into the golden light, stronger, freer, unafraid. Because sometimes the greatest transformation doesn't come from fighting harder. It comes from standing still long enough to realize you've already won. The cafeteria had never been quieter. Not since that day. Even weeks later, when the laughter returned and life fell back into its rhythm, there was still something different about that space. Maybe it was the memory that lingered between the tables, the echo of courage, the sound of balance restored. Ava didn't think about it much anymore. She'd moved on. People still whispered about the cafeteria flip, but it had become more of a legend than a memory. A story that students told freshmen in hushed tones. You don't mess with Ava Monroe. She doesn't fight. She teaches lessons. But Ava didn't carry pride in it. She carried peace. She'd stopped being the new girl. Now she was just Ava, the quiet one who could draw anything, who smiled at everyone, who somehow made the noise around her fade when she walked into a room. One afternoon, during art class, Mr. Carter handed back sketchbooks for the semester portfolio. On the last page of hers, he'd written a note, "Your art doesn't just speak. It listens." "Don't lose that." Ava read it twice, smiling. After class, she walked past the Respect Week poster still hanging. Corners curling a little now, but still bright. Beneath it, someone had added a sticky note that said, "You changed everything." She didn't know who wrote it. She didn't need to. That evening, the sun set over Eastbridge in streaks of red and gold. Ava walked home with Kayla, their laughter drifting down the empty street. At the corner, Kayla stopped. "You ever think about how different everything could have been if you'd just stayed quiet?" Ava looked at her, thoughtful. "I wasn't quiet. I just chose when to speak," Kayla grinned. "Girl, that's a quote," Ava laughed, shaking her head. "Then remember it." They parted ways, and as Ava turned down her street, the last light of day stretched long shadows across the pavement. She thought about how far she'd come, how 2 weeks had changed her life, how one moment of courage had rewritten the way people saw her and the way she saw herself. When she reached her house, she paused at the porch. Her mother was watering the plants, humming that same soft tune she always did when she was content. Ava leaned against the railing, watching her. "Mom?" Her mother looked up. "Yeah, baby." Ava hesitated. "You ever think maybe Dad knew this was going to happen? Like, he trained me for it without knowing." Her mom smiled gently. "Oh, he knew life would test you. He just wanted you to be ready for the day someone tried to make you forget who you are." Ava nodded slowly. "I almost did forget." "But you remembered," her mom said, placing the watering can down. "And that's what matters. You remembered your strength and you used it right." They stood there in the soft glow of evening, a quiet settling between them like comfort. Later in her room, Ava opened her sketchbook again. On the last blank page, she drew two figures. A small girl standing in the shadow of a larger one, both connected by a single thread of light. Above them, she wrote, "You don't have to be loud to be powerful." She closed the book and exhaled. The next morning, as she walked into school, she passed Marcus in the hallway. He nodded respectfully. "Morning, Ava," she smiled. "Morning, Marcus." No tension, no bitterness. Just mutual understanding, the kind that only comes after both people have been humbled by truth. By lunchtime, the cafeteria was its usual chaos again. Laughter, chatter, the scrape of chairs, and the hum of teenage energy. But when Ava sat down at her table, she noticed something new. Across the room, a smaller boy freshman maybe was being teased by a group at another table. He looked nervous, trapped. Before Ava could move, Marcus stood up, walked over, said something to the group. They quieted down. The boy's shoulders relaxed. Marcus gave him a pat on the back, then returned to his seat. Ava just watched, a faint smile playing at her lips. People really could change. Later that day, she would think back to that moment, the first sign that her story had planted something bigger than fear. Maybe kindness. Maybe courage. That night, she sat by her window watching the city lights flicker. She thought about her father again, about how he used to tell her that the world doesn't change because of noise, it changes because of moments. Because someone decides that enough is enough and does something about it. In the quiet, she whispered to herself. Sometimes the loudest person in the room learns silence the hard way. And maybe she thought that was the lesson the world needed most. She reached for her phone and opened her video app. A blank screen stared back at her, waiting. She hit record. The camera focused on her face, calm, steady, sure. She began to speak, her voice soft but full of conviction. "I used to think being silent made me weak, but silence can hold power. Power to think, to breathe, to decide who you want to be. You don't win by shouting louder. You win by standing taller. If someone tries to break you, remember, they can only touch what you give them. Keep your peace. Protect your light." She paused, then smiled faintly at the camera. "And if you ever forget how strong you are, just remember the quiet girl who didn't fight to hurt, but fought to be heard." She ended the recording, watched it once, and hit upload. It had reached thousands, then tens of thousands. Comments flooded in, people sharing their own stories, their own battles, their own moments of finding strength in stillness, and beneath all the comments, the most repeated line was the one she hadn't even realized would stay with people. You don't win by shouting louder. You win by standing taller. Ava didn't see herself as an influencer or an icon. She was just a girl who'd survived a moment, learned from it, and passed that lesson on. But as she walked to school the next day, a group of freshmen smiled at her, one of them whispering, "That's Hertha Calm Storm Girl." She smiled back, not out of pride, but gratitude. Because sometimes the story you never wanted to live becomes the one that saves someone else. And somewhere, she knew. Her father was smiling too. The wind outside Eastbridge hummed softly against the windows as the final bell echoed through the halls. Another day, another chapter, but for Ava Monroe. Life no longer felt like something she had to survive. Felt like something she was finally beginning to live. She stepped out into the sunlight. Her backpack slung over one shoulder, that same quiet confidence in her stride. The sky was painted gold, and for the first time since she'd arrived in this town, the world felt wide open. Free, as she walked past the school gate. She noticed a group of younger students huddled under the oak tree. They were watching her not with fear, not with curiosity, but with admiration. One of them, a small girl with braids and glasses, smiled shyly. Ava smiled back. That tiny moment, simple, wordless, meant everything. Because somewhere deep inside, Ava knew that her story had already done its work. Not by going viral, not by making her a legend, but by reminding people that strength isn't always loud, and courage doesn't always roar. She took a deep breath, looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you." "Dad," the camera slowly pans up with her gaze, the sunset stretching wide. Warm light spilling across the street, the world soft and full of possibility. In a world that often mistakes silence for weakness, Ava Monroe proved that stillness can shake the ground. She didn't fight to hurt, she fought to heal. And maybe that's what real power looks like, the kind that doesn't scream, the kind that simply stands. If this story moved you, don't just scroll by. Hit subscribe. Because we tell the stories that remind the world what real strength looks like. The quiet kind. The kind that changes everything. Every story leaves a mark. Make sure you don't miss the next one.